everybody. It's Mrs. Colby and Dexter today, listening to a story, the BFG, another chapter. Dexter comes running now whenever he hears me reading. He has to hop up and listen to the story. So we're going to read a new chapter today called The Great Plan. Yesterday's chapter that we read, the BFG had taken Sophie to the dreamland where they catch dreams with his dream catching net, and they had caught 2 of them. And then he was talking to her about all the dreams on all the walls, on all the shelves, and that he put a little label on them so he would kind of know what was inside. And then he would pick certain jars every night when he went to blow dreams into the children's windows. So they would have certain dreams. He had boy dreams and girl dreams. And Sophie was just reading the little labels on the front to get a little taste of what was in the dreams. So this chapter is called The Great Plan. Oh, and remember, all the giants at the very end of the chapter had gone running off to all the different places to gobble up children in England, and they were just, Sophie is mortified by that, and so is the BFG. So this is called The Great Plan. "We've absolutely got to stop them," Sophie cried. "Put me back in your pocket quick, and we'll chase after them, and we'll warn everybody in England that they're coming." "Read, don't you listen, impossible," the BFG said. "They is going 2 times fast as me, and they is finishing up their guzzle before we is halfway there." "Well, we can't just sit here and do nothing," Sophie cried. "How many boys and girls are they going to eat tonight?" "Many," said the BFG. "The flesh lump eating giant alone has a most squawkling wopsy appetite." "Will he snitch them out of their beds while they're sleeping?" "Like peas out of a poodle," said the BFG. "Oh, I can't bear to think of it," Sophie cried. "Then don't," the BFG said. "For years and years I is sitting here on this very rock every night after night when they is galloping away, and I is feeling so sad for all the human beings they is going to gobble up. But I has had to get used to it. There is nothing I can do. If I wasn't a titchy little runt of a giant only 24 feet high, I would be stopping them. But that is absolutely out the window." "Do you always know where they're going?" Sophie asked. "Always," said the BFG. "Every night they is yelling at me as they go boodling past. The other day they was yelling, 'We is off to Mrs. Sippy and Miss Sorry to guzzle them both.'" "Disgusting," said Sophie. "I hate them." She and the big friendly giant sat quietly side by side on the blue rock in the gathering dusk. Sophie had never felt so hopeless in her whole life. After a while, she stood up and cried out, "I can't stand it. Just think of those poor boys and girls who are going to be eaten alive in a few hours' time. We can't just sit here and do nothing. We've got to go after those brutes." "No," said the BFG. "We must," Sophie cried. "Why won't you go?" The BFG sighed and shook his head firmly. "I has told you 5 or 6 times," he said, "and the 3rd will be the last. I is never showing myself to human beings, Sophie." "Well, why ever not? If I do, they will be putting me in a zoo with all the jiggy graphs and the caterpillars." "Nonsense," said Sophie. "And they will be sending you straight back to your orphanage," the BFG went on. "Grown-up human beings is not famous for their kindness. They is all swift-roddlers and grink-sluggers." "That simply isn't true," Sophie cried angrily. "Some of them are very kind indeed." "Who?" said the BFG. "Name one." "Well, the Queen of England," Sophie said. "You can't call her a swift-rodder or a glink-slugger." "Well," said the BFG, "you can't call her a squeak-pip or a nut-mucher either," Sophie said, getting angrier and angrier. "The flesh lump-eater is longing dearly to guzzle her up," said the BFG, smiling a little bit now. "Who? The Queen?" Sophie cried aghast. "Yes," said the BFG. "Flesh lump-eater says he is never eating a queen, and he thinks perhaps he has an especially scrumptious flavor." "How dare he," said Sophie. "But the flesh lump-eater says there is too many soldiers around her palace. He daren't try it." Uh-oh. You're getting down? Oh, boy. Here he goes. "He better not," Sophie said. "He is also saying he would like it very much to guzzle one of the soldiers in his pretty red suits. But he is worried about those big black furry hats they is wearing. He is thinking they might be sticking in his throat." I hope he chokes, Sophie said. Oh, Flesh Lump Eater is a very careful giant, the BFG said. Sophie went silent for a few moments. Then suddenly, her voice filled with excitement, and she cried out, I've got it! By golly, I think I've got it! Got what? Said the BFG. The answer, said Sophie. We'll go to the Queen. It's a terrific idea. If I went and told the Queen about those disgusting man-eating giants, I am sure she would do something about it. The BFG looked down at her sadly and shook his head. She is never believing you, he said. Never in a month of Mondays. Never, said the BFG. I think she would. It's sounding like such a wonky tall story. The Queen will be laughing and saying, What awful rubbish squash. She would not. Of course she would, the BFG said. I has told you before that human beings is simply not believing a giant, Sophie. Well, then it's up to us to find a way of making her believe in them, she said. And how is you going to get to the Queen anyway, the BFG said. Now hold on a sec, Sophie said. You just hold on, because I've got another idea. Your ideas is full of crogswoggle, the BFG said. Not this one, Sophie said. You say that if we tell the Queen, she would never believe us? I is certain she wouldn't, said the BFG. Well, we aren't going to tell her, Sophie said excitedly. We don't have to tell her. We will make her dream it. That is an even more froth-buggling suggestion, the BFG said. Dreams is a lot of fun, but nobody is believing in their dreams either. You was only believing in a dream while you was actually dreaming it. But as soon as you was waking up, you was saying, Oh, thank goodness it was only a dream. Don't you worry about that part of it, Sophie said. I can fix that. Never can you fix it, the BFG said. I can, I swear I can. But first of all, let me ask you a very important question. Here it is. Can you make a person dream absolutely anything in the world? Anything you like, the BFG said proudly. If I said I wanted to dream I was flying in a bathtub with silver wings, could you make me dream it? I could, the BFG said. But how, Sophie said. You obviously don't have exactly that dream in your collection. I do not, the BFG said, but I would soon be mixing it up. How could you mix it up? Oh, it is a little bit like mixing a cake, the BFG said. If you was putting the right amounts of all the different things into it, you is making the cake come out any way you was wanting it. Sugary, spongy, curranty, Christmassy, gobswitchy. It is the same with dreams. Go on, said Sophie. Oh, I has dillions of dreams on my shelves. Is I right or is I left? You're right, said Sophie. I has dreams about bathtubs, lots of them. And I has dreams about silver wings. And I has dreams about flying. So all I has to do is mix those dreams together in the proper way, and I is very quickly making a dream where you is flying in a bathtub with silver wings. I see what you mean, Sophie said, but I didn't know you could mix one dream with another. Oh, dreams like being mixed, the BFG answered. They is getting very lonesome all by themselves in those glassy bottles. Right, Sophie said. Now then, do you have any dreams about the Queen of England? Lots of them, the BFG said. And what about giants? Of course, the BFG said. Any about giants eating people? Swiggles of them, the BFG said. And do you have any about little girls like me? Oh, those is the commonest of all, the BFG said. I has bottles and bottles of dreams about little girls. And could you mix all of them up just like I want you to, Sophie asked. She was getting more and more excited. Of course, the BFG said. But how is this helping us, Sophie? I think you is barking up the wrong dog. Now hold on, said Sophie. Listen carefully. I want you to mix a dream which you will blow into the Queen of England's bedroom when she's asleep. And this is how the dream's going to go. Now hang on one minute, the BFG said. How is I possibly going to get near enough to the Queen of England's bedroom to blow in a dream? You was talking dumb silly. I'll tell you about that later, Sophie said. For the moment, please listen carefully. Here's the dream I want you to mix. Are you paying attention? Very close, the BFG said. I want the queen to dream that 9 disgusting giants, each one about 50 feet tall, are galloping off to England in the night. She must dream their names as well. What are their names again? Flesh Lump Eater, the BFG said, Man Hugger, Bone Cruncher, Child Chewer, Meat Dripper, Gizzard Gulper, Mate Masher, Blood Bottler, and the Butcher Boy. Let her dream all of those names, Sophie said, and let her dream that they'll be creeping into England in the depths of the witching hour, snatching up little girls and boys from their beds. Let her dream that they'll be reaching into the bedroom windows and pulling the little girls and boys out of their beds. And then, Sophie paused. Do they eat them on the spot or do they carry them away first? She asked. Oh, they usually just popping them straight into their mouths like popcorn, the BFG said. Put that in the dream too, Sophie said. And then the dream must say when their tummies are full, they go galloping back to giant country where no one can find them. Is that all? Said the BFG. Oh, certainly not, Sophie said. You must then explain to the queen that in her dream there was a big friendly giant who can tell her where all those beasts are living so she can send her soldiers and armies to capture them. And now, let her dream one last very important thing. Let her dream that there's a little girl called Sophie sitting on her windowsill who will tell her where the BFG is hiding. Where is he hiding? The BFG said. We'll come to that later, cried Sophie. So the queen dreams her dream, right? Right, said the BFG. Then, when she wakes up, the first thing she thinks is, oh, what a horrid dream. I'm so glad it was only a dream. And then she looks up from her pillow, and what does she see? What does she see? The BFG asked. She sees a little girl called Sophie sitting right on her windowsill, right there in real life before her eyes. How is you going to be sitting on the queen's windowsill, I beg? The BFG said. You are going to put me there, Sophie said. And that's the lovely part about it. If someone dreams that there's a little girl sitting on her windowsill, and then when she wakes up there really is a little girl sitting there, then that is a dream come true, is it not? I is beginning to see where you is driving to, the BFG said. If the queen is knowing that part of her dream is true, perhaps she will be believing the rest of it is true as well. That's about it, said Sophie, but I shall have to convince her myself. You said you was wanting the dream to say there is a big friendly giant who is going to talk to the queen. Absolutely, said Sophie. You must. You're the only one who can tell her where to find the other giants. How is I meeting the queen? Asked the BFG. I is not wanting to be shooted by soldiers. Well, the soldiers are only in the front of the palace, Sophie said. In the back, there's a huge garden, and there are no soldiers there at all. There's a very high wall with spikes around it, and the garden to stop people from climbing in, but you could simply walk over that. How is you knowing all this about the Queen's palace? The BFG asked. Well, last year I was in a different orphanage, Sophie said. It was in London, and we used to go for walks all around there. Is you helping me to find the palace? The BFG asked. I has never dared to go hide and sneaking around London in my life. I'll show you the way, Sophie said confidently. I is frightened of London, the BFG said. Don't be, Sophie said. It's full of tiny dark streets and there are very few people about in the witching hour. The BFG picked up Sophie between one finger and thumb and placed her gently in the palm of his hand. Is the Queen's palace very big? He asked. Huge, Sophie said. Then how was we finding the right bedroom? That's up to you, Sophie said. You're supposed to be an expert at that sort of thing. And you is absolutely sure the Queen will not be putting me in the zoo with all the caterpillars? Of course she won't, Sophie said. You're going to be a hero, and you will never have to eat snozcumbers again. Sophie saw the BFG's eyes widen, and he licked his lips. You mean it, he said. You really mean it? No more disgustive snozcumbers? You couldn't get one if you wanted to, Sophie said. Human beings don't grow them. That did it. The BFG got to his feet. When is you wanting me to mix this special dream, he asked. Now, said Sophie, all at once. When is we going to see the Queen, he asked. Tonight, said Sophie, as soon as you've mixed up the dream. Tonight, said the BFG. Why is such a flush-bunkling flurry? Well, if we can't save tonight's children, we can anyway save tomorrow, Sophie said. What's more, I'm getting famished. I haven't had a thing to eat for 24 hours. Then we had better get crackling, the BFG said, moving toward the cave. Sophie kissed him on the tip of his thumb. I knew you'd do it, she said. Come on, let's hurry. The next chapter, I don't know if we're going to get all the way through it, but we might read a little bit of it. Oh yeah, it's kind of a long one. But we'll start it, read a little bit of it. Mixing the dream. It was dark now. The night had already begun. The BFG, with Sophie sitting on his hand, hurried into the cave and put on those brilliant, blinding lights that seemed to come from nowhere. He placed Sophie on the table, saying, Stay there, please, he said, and no chittering. I is needing to listen only to the silence when I is mixing up such a naughty, plexicated dream as this. He hurried away from her. He got out an enormous empty glass jar that was just the size of a washing machine. That's a big jar. He clutched it to his chest and hurried toward the shelves, which stood on the thousands and thousands of smaller jars containing all the captured dreams. Dreams about giants, he is muttering to himself as he searched the labels. The giants is guzzling human beings? No, not that one. Nor that one. Here's one. Oh, here's another. He grabbed the jars and unscrewed the tops. He tipped the dreams into the enormous jar he was clutching, and as each one went in, Sophie caught a glimpse of a small green blob tumbling from one jar into another. The BFG hurried towards another shelf. Now, he muttered, I is wanting dreams about giggle houses for girls and about boggle boxes for boys. He was becoming very tense now. Sophie could almost see the excitement bubbling in him as he hurried back and forth among his beloved jars. There must have been 50,000 dreams altogether on those shelves, but he seemed to know almost exactly where every single one was. Dreams about a little girl, he muttered, and dreams about me, the BFG. Come on, hurry up. Get on with it. Now, where in the world is that wonky dream? And so it went. In about a half an hour, the BFG had found all the dreams he wanted, and he had tipped them into one huge jar. He put the jar on the table. Sophie sat watching but said nothing. Inside the big jar, lying on the bottom of it, she could clearly see about little 50 of those oval green jellyfish shapes, all pulsing gently in and out. Some were lying on the tops of others, but each one still quite separate in an individual dream. Now he is mixing them, the BFG announced. He went to the cupboard where he kept his bottles of Frobscottle, and from it he took out a gigantic egg beater. It was one of those that has a handle that you turn, and down below there's a lot of blades that go whizzing around. He inserted the bottom end of the contraption into the big blue jar where the dreams were lying. Watch, he said. He started turning the handle very fast. Flashes of green and blue exploded in the jar. The dreams were being whisked into a blue-green froth. And that is where we're going to stop for today. So, they're doing something about these giants. The plan has been made. Sophie's got it all orchestrated in her mind how she thinks it's going to go. I'm hoping it will work. They're going to have the trouble of getting into the palace, and the soldiers, of course, finding the queen's bedroom, and then the biggest one of all, making the queen believe that all of this is real. So I don't know. We'll have to see how that works tomorrow. I hope you're enjoying the BFG as much as I am. Our little sweet Sophie and our really amazing BFG that we've come to love. And we will read again tomorrow. So we'll find out what happens when she mixes all of those dreams and if they can really pull this off. Okay, have a great day. See you tomorrow, guys. Bye.